Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome to another Eternal Contenders video series. So today I got something a little spicy for you. So last weekend we had topeight gamer, I think is his name, topeight DETS with a time Primal Shadow Mask of Torment deck that arguably ran a lot of questionable to bad cards in the deck, but the core idea of the deck was quite interesting. Like Ilya and I talked about that the other day, how the core idea of the deck is kind of interesting and might have some potential if you clean it up and streamline it and build a tuned version of it. And Ilya had the idea to even go further and try going 4-faction with Harsh Rule and 8 of the Horu as the main draws of Justice. But while the idea looked kind of cool and interesting and like it might potentially work, we gave it a try and just didn't feel very good for various reasons, so I kind of gave up on it and went back to just messing with a 3-faction approach. And this is what I currently came up with, and this felt a lot better and performed significantly better than the 4-faction version. And I think this might at least be potentially like a solid tier 2 deck or something. I don't know exactly how great the deck is overall, but it definitely shown some promise. And it's kind of similar to Feln Control in a way, except that it does more powerful things than Feln, and is better at the Tempest game than Feln. So that are things that I like about the deck. And the deck is a pretty cool like go big and go late control deck, and does that pretty well between Mask, Channel, and Devoted Theurge. So let's take a look at the deck. So as a removal suit we have 3 Annihilate, 3 Lightning Strike, 2 Banish, 4 Hailstorm, 4 Feeding Time, and if you want to count them, 4 Channel to Tempest. So Annihilate gotten a bit better again. There's a fair share of good Annihilate targets out there, which is why I think 3 is fine. You can run 3. Like for quite some time I wouldn't want more than 2, but I think by now 3 is fine in a deck like this. Especially because you need to be able to deal with enough big units if you plan on going late. Especially if your other removal is Lightning Strike, which has its own upsides. It's really good early game because it deals with basically anything early game, no matter what color or stat line they have, because all the early units usually have less than 4 health, bearing very few 3-drop exceptions. The other thing is it is particularly good against units with charge, and also particularly good against relic weapons, which is something these decks have their fair share of issues with a lot of the time. Banish sort of similar, deals with some bigger stuff than Lightning Strike, but is still a fast spell, so it still helps against charge, especially like Haunting Scream for example. That's by the way the biggest charge thing that Lightning Strike is needed for. Also helps with some relic weapons, namely Auric Runehammer, and just is overall a decent removal. Also if there's more other mass decks, which I've seen a fair share of, then Banish goes way up in value as well. I'm not like 100% sure, unless there is enough mass decks, that Banish is the right choice. It's possible that some other removal would be a better option, but for now I like the split. Hailstorm is kind of self-explanatory. It is arguably the best sweeper in the game right now. I think the card is probably better than Hailstorm, since against aggressive decks, better than Harsh Rule, since against aggressive decks where you want to aggressively sweep, Harsh Rule is often a bit too slow and too clunky, and Hailstorm is the right cost and kills almost everything you need to kill. Although it is much worse against big mid-range decks, especially time-based mid-range decks where Harsh Rule shines the most. So they have sort of different focal points. Then we have feeding time. First of all, the power base of the deck cannot reliably support in cold blood. Second of all, I think in most cases feeding time is just better because there are cards that in cold blood doesn't do anything about that feeding time is great, like Gorgon Fanatic, a Naked Gorgon Fanatic out of a Scream deck, or a Dawnwalker out of a Time deck, to name two particularly critical ones. But there are a couple of other options like Tormentor out of a Mask deck, and so on and so forth. And I mean, it still shuts down Magto, for example, and Alchemist, so it's not like it's worse at the suppressing Void stuff part. It just doesn't give you the random free win by having them discard a card or two because they drew multiple copies early on, which is not very likely, but happens sometimes, or by extracting all the Icarias from an Icaria control deck. That's like the only random upsides that In Cold Blood has, and I much rather reliably deal with all the things that I need to deal with and that could beat me long term, rather than have the random high roll of like making them discard a card. And yeah, channel is just the top end. It's removal, it's finisher, it's card advantage engine, it's everything. It's the heart of the deck, together with Mask, probably. And then yeah, we have the 4 Mask. They allow the deck to ramp really well and generate a lot of power. Like you can easily get to spots where you can either like channel plus do something else pretty quickly. It's a finisher, like a kill condition in itself, because eventually you'll just get the Tormentor to kill your opponent. So it's nice to have something that provides a lot of power and also later serves as double duty to kill an opponent. Also combos really well with Devoted Theurge. You can use all the power to pump Theurge to gain back health and generate a big unit, as well as the health you generate generates more power, which in turn then generates more health. So it just kind of like snowballs in the late game and makes it really hard for people to kill you, because you have so much inevitability with all the health gain and tons of power. So it becomes really hard to overwhelm you and finish you off. Then we have just like some Temple Scribes, because they have nice synergy with Mask, and they also happen to be really nice early game cards against aggressive decks to just trade with the small stuff. Yeah, Theurge already has been mentioned, great card with Mask, and also just a great card against pressure, and gaining a lot of health is in general nice in a control deck, if it doesn't cost you any cards. And then we have Black Sky Harbinger as another source of lifesteal, and also a way to stabilize both with the life gain and also just because it's a good blocker. Unfortunately, some time ago they changed the Black Sky Harbinger life gain source to 1 trigger rather than 1 trigger per source, so you don't gain like 5 health ticks. If you hit 5 things, you just gain 5 health from 1 tick. So it doesn't like turbocharge Mask, which is really sad, because that would be really cool. That's something that I initially thought is possible, until I realized that they actually changed Harbinger, because I never really noticed that they did that. I just remembered that at some point it was individual ticks, because it didn't really matter for anything before. And yeah, then we have card draw for Strategize, for Wisdom, to smooth out our draws and make sure we hit our power drops and have enough business to ramp up to our top end. Like the reason why I don't run any Permafrost, for example, is that while Permafrost is very efficient, I'm not the biggest fan of Permafrost in a control deck that does not have Harsh Roll, simply because the problem is you Permafrost a dangerous threat, like a bigger guy, like say an Impending Doom, and then it's just lying around for a long time because you don't kill it for free with a Harsh Roll sweeping it away. So eventually the opponent will say draw their Enforcer, silence it, and immediately hit you for 5, and stuff like that is really problematic, and also makes cards like Enforcer, Deep Forge Blade and stuff like that a lot better, or even Purify, Desert Marshal and so on, there's a fair share of ways for permafrost to blow back up in your face if you let the permafrost lie around forever. So if you have Harsh Roll, it's fine. You can eventually just sweep the creature, like the unit away. It's just kind of like a semi-permanent fix because it's not forever. But if it's basically meant to be forever, I'm not a big fan of permafrost if you're trying to go late. There's just too much risk involved. Better just play removal that is finite. And also the deck is not that slow and clunky in its power development that it super desperately needs the 1 power removal, unlike some other 3 faction decks that have a lot more depleted power sources and just develop slower. And yeah, I think that covers all the removal options and stuff. I mean, cards like Katra, for example, just don't make any sense. First of all, I built the deck to be as consistent color-wise as possible. So the deck wants double time, double Primal and a single Shadow, and eventually quadruple Primal. So the deck is basically Elysian / Shadow, making the power base very consistent and very nice, and also allowing for quite a bunch of Ember and Cobalt Waystones. So talking about the power base, we have 4 Seek Power, just nice fixing and helps with our seeds. We have we managed to get quite a lot of ready power sources in here, 11 total. 2 Cobalt Waystone, 3 Ember Waystone. I chose that split because we need enough Primal Sigils for our channel to make sure we always have a Primal to fetch to hit our force Primal for channel. And also they can be useless in multiples if you already have an Aegis up and draw the second and have to play it as power. It's not going to do anything, while Ember Waystone is always doing something and basically ramps our mask for free and increases our survivability a bit, so that's nice. And then we have 8 Crests, since the deck can easily support a lot of Crests. Could even support 12 if we had them, but we don't. So we run 4 Seed of Mystery in place of those Crests, and then yeah, we just have 4 power slots left, which go to 1 of each seed, and 2 Xenon banners. The banners are not that great here, but we just needed another Xenon duel for the power base configuration, because we really don't want more Shadow Sigils and less of the other sigils, so there's no way around running a couple banners. But it's okay, I mean, it's only 2 banners and we have 12 units, so you can sometimes squeeze them in as a ready power source even, so sometimes they're even better than a seed. So that is not bad. And yeah, the deck is pretty cool and kind of fun, and you probably have seen my stream highlight where I was playing the probably longest Eternal game I've played so far, where we had like 3 Tormentors going, I think, at some point, and eventually 4, and just pumped out all the Spitelings until our opponent eventually died just before we ran out of cards. And yeah, the deck really doesn't need cards like Lumen Reclaimer. You're just gonna have 1 less card in your deck that is actually useful, because Reclaimer is not useful. Also, Reclaimer has some tension with your Tormentor sometimes. And yeah, there's just no need for something like Lumen Reclaimer. And like I said, Katra costs double Shadow, and also the deck just doesn't have more units it wants to run, and it's just kind of like win more and unnecessary. Like if we have Spitelings going, or if we have a Tormentor going and have a couple units in play, we don't need something like a Katra that's like a proactive mid-range threat and not something you want in a deck like this. And yeah, I mean, I don't even get why there was Crown in the original deck in the first place. It doesn't make any sense. Deck doesn't have a lot of units and doesn't do anything. Like, you can get some lucky rolls on Harbinger, like Deadly on Harbinger is great, but you're just playing like a terrible card that doesn't really do anything worth the investment of a card or the 3 power. Sunken Tower is cute, but once again, win more. You have like Scribe as a great edition, like all 3 units are kind of good good targets for it, but you also don't have a lot, and it's really clunky, and you really don't want to give your units reckless and so on and so forth. It's just another bad card, and various other things. So yeah, but yeah, I quite like this list. The removal suit here, like the 2 Banish, 3 Annihilate, 3 Strike slot, these 8 slots, could be a bit meddled with, like adjusting the removal suit a bit. But other than that, I think the list is pretty inflexible. Like most of these cards, like you always want for Channel, you always want for Harbinger, you always want for Mask, you always want for Feeding Time, for Theurge, for Wisdom, for Hailstorm. I mean, you don't necessarily need the Scribe, so that is something that you could mess with if you want to, but they are nice and they kind of take the place of Varus Favor, since the deck cannot support Varus Favor. They just make the deck smoother, and since we want the double time for Theurge, it's not that big of a deal to go higher on time for the Scribes, which also benefits the Waystones and even allows for the Waystones. And you also always want for Strategize, and you also always at least want 31 power. I could see wanting 32, but 31 should be okay between Strategize, Scribe, Wisdom, and Mask. So yeah, oh, and the 8 Crests for Scout as well. So the 31 power should be okay with the Mask. Without Mask, I would probably want 32 or 33 with Channel in the deck. So yeah, that's it for the deck list. Always nice to have a cool and interesting new deck, or even control deck for all the control aficionados out there. And yeah, top 8 gamer had an interesting core idea going in his deck, even though I think the deck itself was pretty poorly tuned and had way too many cute and gimmicky things going on. But yeah, he made me build this, so there's stuff coming out of his original idea that might further develop the metagame and the decks we have available. So shout out to him for his I think top 4 or even finals performance in the I think he lost in the finals. Yeah, he lost in the finals to Ardenport. So congrats to him on his ETS finals, even with the very gimmicky, untuned version of this idea. So there seems to be some real potential here. Alright, as usual, gonna hop into some games, show it to you in action, so stay tuned for game 1 next.